Hello, figure students. This is a lecture on portraiture. All right, here we go. So to start out, it's important to know the general proportions of the portrait. So again, these are general. So these are not the end all be all. We should know these and check our proportions based on these. But we should always be observing our portrait, whether it's us that we're drawing or somebody else. You need to objectively observe that portrait because, as we all know, everybody looks different. But these are the general proportions. Things will line up generally like this, so it is important to know this, and it especially helps when first laying out the portrait. So, to start out, we actually have a 3:4 ratio here and a 5:6 ratio here. I have another image that shows that a little bit better. So we have the general ellipse shapes that this portrait takes up. We do have a definition of the jawline here, and the top of the cranium takes up like a hemisphere shape from the frontal view. Then we know that from the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, we can divide this in half and find the eye line. And this line will go straight through the pupils. We can then divide that eye line into fifths. And the middle of, like on either side of the middle of that fifth measurement will be the placement of the eyes. The general placement of the eyes. The outside lies about on the outside of the ears. Some people's ears kind of go outside of that. Mine do. But this will line up with the edge of the cranium. The ears pop out just a little bit sometimes. Some people's ears are tucked more in. So we have the placement of the eyes. Then we can go down from the middle or on the inside of the eye placement, and we can place the outer ridges of the nose. Some people's noses are bigger than others. Okay, and then we can place the bottom of the nose and the brow ridge based on, we can kind of go a little bit lower than the top of the head, and we can divide from the bottom of the chin to the bottom of the nose to the brow ridge and to the hairline. Those will be equal thirds. So that's a really important measurement to use when drawing your portrait. That's a really important thing to check. Bottom of the chin to the bottom of the nose to the brow ridge to the hairline. Those are in thirds. We can place from going along that vertical line, we can place the division of the mouth by dividing from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin into thirds. And that top third line will be the mouth division. Now, that's important because as we know, people's lips are very different. I have very thin lips, especially my top lip is very thin, but other people have very big top lips and bottom lips. But what's important to place is that mouth division line. And the outside edges of the mouth change drastically from person to person. And it's also important to know that rarely do we draw the outline of the lips unless we're drawing a line drawing. It's usually value shifts that make up the lips. We don't typically have very strong lines around those unless maybe you're wearing lipstick or something, but typically it's just value shifts around the mouth. And then to find the corners of the mouth, we can go straight down from the pupils and we can find the end of that division line. And we're going to go over detail or features here a little bit more. So that is the frontal view and the general proportions of the frontal view of the portrait. Then if we were to turn the head to the side and do the profile view, like a mugshot, we still have the half, the one the half division, right? From the top of the head to the bottom of the chin, we can divide that in half. That's still the eye line. And from the hairline to the brow ridge to the bottom of the nose to the chin, that's still thirds. But to kind of place the ear, I always forget to say this until here, but we can we can make a 45, 45, and a 90-degree triangle to find the placement of the ear. Now, you don't need to bring your protractor out, but it's, right? That's what those are called. But it's something good to know. Also, back to the frontal view, we can go straight over from the brow ridge to the bottom of the nose, and the ear will be placed within those. Sometimes it will reach, down to there, and then if you don't know, your ears, maybe I'm saying this wrong, but I'm pretty sure your ears and your nose are two things that never stop growing. So because it's cartilage, so somehow it just constantly builds. So as you get older, these actually get bigger. So that's why like some older people have really big ears. So they're very good at listening, right? So if you're drawing it like an older person, maybe this is a little bit bigger, right? But that is the general placement of it, is that it goes straight over from the brow ridge and the bottom of the nose. Same for the profile view. But as far as how back it goes, we can take a 45-degree angle from, if we were to draw a straight line down from the eyes, take a 45-degree angle from this point to, if we were to go straight down from the eyes, where this intersects the chin line, we can take a 45-degree angle over and a 45-degree angle from here over, and that's the general placement of the ear. So we just want to make sure our ears aren't way back here or way up here, or, this can help give a general placement of that. And these next two slides are everything I just said, just written out, and I will keep that in the PowerPoint so you can see that later. So this is just a little drawing that maybe I should have shown you this earlier, whatever. But 3 to 4 is the ratio of the frontal view, and then we have a 5 to 6 ratio for the profile view. So those are just, again, general proportions. And this is also showing that we have this division line right in the middle of the portrait, obviously because it's a symmetrical face. You can draw a division line right in the middle, and that will help organize the portrait no matter which way it is pointed. We can point it up, down, side to side, at an angle, but as long as we have this division line that we place, we can help place the rest of the portrait. Also, the features that are symmetrical along that vertical line, we can draw lines perpendicular to this vertical line and help align those features. So the eyebrows, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, and the ears. But yeah, depending on which way you turn, you're not going to see both of your ears, but that can place it from, the brow ridge to the nose. But we say perpendicular to this vertical line because right now these are horizontal lines, but if the head were to move from side to side, this would change. So what we know is that there's going to be a vertical line that goes straight through the middle of the portrait. Now, it might not always be vertical, but there will be a division line straight through the middle, and perpendicular to that division line will be these lines that help organize those features. This is those general proportion kind of marks here. And this is showing that this is true even on the profile view here. Okay. This is a little, a very quick makeup of the 3/4 view, showing that we do have this division line here through the middle that can help place the features. It's also helpful to know there's a side plane of the cranium, frontal plane, and a top plane of the cranium. That's what's happening right here. This brow ridge is being drawn to start to organize the portrait. We know that the mandible comes up like this. We also have the zygomatic bone that comes straight out like this to start to create the eye socket. And then we know that the nose comes out. It's not necessarily it's a bone. It's a lot of cartilage and skin comes out at this rectangle that comes out at an angle. So we have this kind of triangle on the side. And then we can start to give like a planar construction of the head. But it's important to know that if you're drawing a 3/4 view, which you very likely will, that you will need to really draw that division line down the middle of the face to help organize that. This is some more planar studies, emphasizing front plane here, top plane here, and then it's important to see. So we have the side planes on the face on either side, and they kind of come in at an angle here. Again, the zygomatic bone here that make up the eye socket. But the inside of the eye socket, so that the above the eyes, the bottom of the nose, the bottom of the lip and of the upper lip, and the underneath the bottom lip and the chin, these are all bottom planes that go inward. So that's what's helping give 3-dimensionality to our face. We have these side planes that come out to form the nose, and we have the philtrum that comes out from the bottom of the nose to find these points at the mouth, and again, side planes that come out there. The eyelid, you can divide into like 3 different planes. We'll go over this in a little bit more detail here in a second. And this is a pretty general planar construction of this bottom lid here, but there are spheres that make up your eyeballs, and then your eyelids go around that. But the major thing to know here from this slide is that we have these bottom planes that go in on our skull to help give 3-dimensionality on the portrait. Okay. I'm going to show you a couple barg plates. These are really old drawings from the 1800s. A couple of a couple of old masters that did a lot of studies on figurative work, and we have their plates to study from. So what I really love about these studies are that it emphasizes this general to specific approach, again, emphasizing a lot of things that we've already been learning in class, that straight line construction and that general to specific. Really, that's why we spent so much time on that, is because it's really important. Straight line construction is the word that I'm giving it, but it has other words like angular breaks. I've heard people use that before. But it's basically the idea that we can draw straight lines to help give general shapes to help define the general shapes that are happening on the figure and on really anything that you're drawing. And what that does is it forces you to be more general so that you can better observe and better find the specifics of the thing that you're drawing. It also helps when finding proportions. When you have angular breaks like this, you can line them up visually and check your proportions, which is a lot harder to do when you have already kind of defined the way a thing looks. But when you start with straight lines, you have more things that you can measure off of and check your proportions off of. So, at any rate, what this image is showing us, again, is that division line right down the middle of the portrait. And then we can organize on either side of that division line by using perpendicular lines from that division line to place the eyes, the nose, the nostrils, and the lip division we can make sure that we're lined up correctly. But really nice study of how we have kind of given a general idea to the value shapes. And this would be a great way to start your portrait is when you do start to place the portrait, then to give general shapes around the value shapes and around the planes, and then get more specific from there. And here's another one. These are all studies done from busts, so that's why we have like these old Greek, Greek kind of sculpture things that we're working off of. But this is a little bit more of this is straight line construction that's getting slightly more specific. So we went from really kind of general shapes here, and then we did get slightly more specific here. So this is taking very complex shapes, which is what you're looking at when you're drawing a portrait and when you're drawing the figure. You're drawing something from the real and it's pretty specific, but to make that interpretation from the three-dimensional to the two-dimensional, it is important to start general. So we can use what we know of the general proportions of the face. And again, this guy has a beard, so his face actually ends right here, right? But make that division line, make those perpendicular lines to help place the features. But you can see very well here how they've taken this very complex shape of everything really, but of the hair. You can see how they've really given a general straight lines to that, and that really helps to begin to place specific things on the portrait. These are some studies of the profile. So what we have here are a lot of different types of faces, right? So, a lot of different types of noses. And so one thing to note here is that we do have this line that kind of comes down from the brow ridge, dissects through the nose, and then down to the lips. Your nose does come out from your face, as you know that. But sometimes we have like an arch here, or sometimes it's a more straight line. Sometimes some people's brow ridges are a lot more prominent than others. But then we do usually have from the chin to the nose, and from the nose to the brow ridge, we do typically have this kind of an angle like this. Now, that will change drastically again from person to person, but that is something you can cite on the profile, is this angle, and getting that correct is really important in getting a likeness. So each of these up here are general studies of the portraits down here, the profile portraits down here. This dude looks really angry, but okay. So the features. Some more bar plates on the features. Right here we have a pretty profile view of that's a profile view of the eye. So we know that we have the eyeball in the eye socket of the skull, and that the eyelid comes out as that levator palpebrae, right? It's a muscle and it's a flap of skin. So that comes out and overlays on top of the eyelid. When it comes up and it opens, we have the division line. We have like a line here that shows the fold of the skin as the skin is folding as the eyelid is opening. Then the bottom lid just kind of pushes down. It doesn't necessarily fold at the bottom, but we do have the eye socket here, which produces kind of these bags under the eyes, depending on how tired you are. These get more puffy, But that's what happens when the eye opens. The bottom lid does kind of collect down here. We have fat, really, there's fat around the eyeball as well as the muscles and the skin. Underneath that skin is buildup of fat. And that builds up just slightly under the bottom lid and over here. So moving from the profile to more of a frontal view. Over here we have more there is buildup of fat around the bottom of the eye socket here, or the side of the eye socket. We have kind of a shape that goes around like this, right? So it is important to note, and let's choose a different one. So a lot of different views of the eye. And I think I'll do a short little drawing of showing you this. But we have the top and bottom eyelid. You can usually see the thickness of the bottom eyelid, and rarely do you see the top thickness, but sometimes you do. These drawings are not including eyelashes, so sometimes your eyelashes kind of cover up the thickness of this top lid, but on your top eyelashes are a lot thicker than your bottom eyelashes. So your bottom eyelashes are really thin, and you can usually see this thickness here of the bottom lid. You can see it really well right here. You can sometimes see the thickness of the top lid. I think so. What you're seeing here with these division lines, we have this plus and minus going through the eye, and it's usually going through the top. Oh, I'll take that out. Okay. Yeah, maybe I should have said this before. So here's your skull, right? We know that the eye sockets are kind of these planes that actually come down at an angle like this. They're not straight up and down. The eye socket also tips upward towards the nose. We have our eyeball that sits inside of that eye socket, but protrudes outside of this flat plane if there were a flat plane here. Our eyelids drape over top of that eyeball. And it's important to know, obviously, that your eyeball is a sphere. So in order to go around it, these planes go up, over, and down, and around the cornea. So we have the cornea that's here. We have the cornea that protrudes out from the iris. So here's your eyeball. The cornea actually is a rounded shape that convex shape outside of the eyeball. It protrudes out from it. The iris actually is slightly flatter. It's not necessarily convex, but there is like an old belief that this iris kind of comes concave, more concave on this side. So one thing to know is that if we have a light shining on our portrait, which we normally do, we're always going to have this highlight. But on the opposite side of that highlight, we're going to have light showing on the iris, right? So if we can think of this as a slight sphere on top of the sphere of the eyeball, that's important to look for when you're getting into the details of your eye on your portrait. Okay, ears. Every ear is different, right? But generally, you can organize the ear with a straight line from the top to the bottom. We have the fold of skin around the top, and we have the cartilage build up that has typically kind of a question mark shape or a C shape, and then this flap of cartilage that comes in on the side. And obviously this changes depending on which way you were looking, but doing ear studies is pretty fun to do. It's really a flap of skin that folds over. We have the shadow shape underneath here. Cartilage buildup from like a C shape that goes around the middle, and then this cartilage flap that comes out. Okay. I couldn't find a great image of mouth and nose studies, so I'm just going to draw these for you, but remember, from the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin, we can divide that up into thirds. And that top third is going to be the mouth division line. We know also that the top and bottom of the lip protrude out from the face, so we have these angles that come out just slightly, and more so depending on who you're drawing. But we can use that division line to help organize the lips, and it's important to know, I think you can see it best on this one. There is no like frontal view of this, but your lip actually comes, the division line on everyone's lip for the most part, comes up, down, pointed down, and then up and down again. It curves down and then it gets slightly flat at the corner. Kind of an upward angle, but it does straighten out. And then we usually have little circles of fat right here at the corner of the mouth, and so you'll see that that this kind of rounds out a little bit around the corner of the mouth. And then straight down from the nose, we have the philtrum that gives the points of the lip. So, and okay, so this is a better study of it right here. Here's that philtrum that comes down from the nose ridge, so the middle of the nose here, where that fold of skin goes under for the bottom of the nose. We have two lines that come out at an angle that build the philtrum, and that's where the points of our lips are. And that same shape is kind of mimicked for the division of the mouth. Lots of mouth studies. So I'm going to end this lecture here, and then go over to a little sketch pad, and this would be a little lecture that I would do in class. All right. So general proportions of the face. We have a 3 to 4 relationship here. Now I drew this top sphere here to keep in mind that we have the top of the cranium here. Okay. The head is symmetrical, so we do have that division line there. And then we can divide this directly in half to give us that middle line for the eyes. I can measure and make sure. So then 3 to 4 relationship here. I can start to divide the eye line into fifths. Let's see how to do that. To make sure do that. And this places kind of our eyes, and this might be slightly off. This places our eyes, and then we can go straight down from there and find kind of the divisions of the nose. Okay, and then we can kind of come a little bit lower from the top of the head there to find the hairline, and divide this up into thirds from here to here to give us our bottom of the nose and the brow ridge. All right. Now our ears kind of start here and here, and they do fall inside of that fifth there. And from that, we know that they're just a slight little angle. My ears might be kind of big. From there, we can kind of help start to define the jawline here, because we know that the jaw starts inside of the ears there. We can get rid of this line here. It's just part of our gesture. So this line being our brow ridge that kind of comes up at an angle like this. We also have the zygomatic bone that comes like this. And then we can divide from here to find the division in the lip. So we know that 1/3, the top third, that's going to be the division of the lip there. Trim that comes out. And then from the middle of the eyes, we can go down, drop down to find the corner of the lip division. So general proportions of the head, we can see it's starting to kind of look like a head. But from there, you're going to want to really look at your model, or if it's yourself that you're drawing yourself in the mirror, you're definitely going to want to change and draw things exactly how you see them. So for instance, the nose, the lips, your eyelids, your brow makeup, very specific to the person. And a lot of times the likeness of the individual is found in between features. It is in the features, but typically sometimes we spend too much time on the features and we forget about the outer areas between the features. So the space between the features is really important as well. But again, just knowing what we know of the features and how those are made up, we can kind of help build just a general portrait here. And then the corners are the folds of the eyelid here. So again, very general. And we know that our ears kind of have this folded shape here. A fold of the skin at the top, and we have the cartilage that kind of comes out. The cranium does kind of come right here, but again, this is the hairline, so depending on what kind of hair the individual has. Draw something like that. So again, very general portrait. These are the general proportions of the portrait. Again, we divide in half to find the eye line. I know my eyes are kind of wonky, but you get the idea. Half to find the eye line. We divided this into fifths, find the placement of the eyes. Divided this into thirds, from the hairline to the brow ridge to the nose, bottom of the nose to the chin. Divided this into thirds, from the bottom of the nose to the chin to find the middle of the mouth. And we drop down from the middle of the eyes to find the ends of the mouth. And we drop down from the corners of the eyes to find the ends of the nose. We know that our jawline kind of does something like this, but again, everybody's jawline is slightly different, so that's something you're going to want to cite. And our ears do tuck in on that fifth measurement, and our ears line up with the brow and the bottom of the nose. All right. Okay, if we remember that our eyeball is a sphere, right? And the cornea protrudes out from that sphere. We have the iris inside of there. But we have that cornea that kind of comes out from the eyeball. So knowing that, we can kind of take that into consideration when we go to draw our eyelid. So if we go to draw the eyeball from the frontal view, we have the eyeball, we have the iris kind of in the middle of that eyeball, and this eyeball sits inside of the eye socket. Our tear duct kind of lines up with the bottom of the iris, and it's kind of at a downward angle, like that. Our bottom eyelid comes up, goes around the kind of the bottom of the iris, then it kind of goes straight back and tucks around the eyeball. Then our top lid goes around and cuts into the top of the iris. It usually intersects the iris, and it will come and actually it overlaps the bottom lid. So when we go to draw the thickness of the lids, we know we can usually see this thickness here more often than we see the thickness of the top lid. We see the thickness of the top lid sometimes. We have the pupil inside of the iris. Depending on where the light is shining, say the light is shining over here, we will have a reflection over here and a lighter side over here. Remember, because the light shines into the cornea, we have that highlight on the one side. That means the light's coming through here and collecting down here at the bottom of the iris, on the opposite side of the highlight, and the edges of the iris are slightly darker than the inside. That's where that collection of color is. Then, as the eyelid opens on the top, we have a fold of skin that collects at the top here. The eye socket kind of wraps around like this. We have a circle of like fat that kind of collects around here. And then our eye socket, this is kind of where the bags of our eyes go, is at the bottom of the eyeball. So depending on how prominent that is in the portrait that you're drawing, you'll see that. And you also have your eyebrow up here. But that is the typical eyeball. And then the eyelashes kind of come off of the top here. Your top eyelashes are much thicker than your bottom ones. And typically they'll kind of take on this shape. We don't generally see individual hairs at the top of like the top eyelashes here. We don't generally see individual hairs. It's typically a shape. And then the bottom eyelashes, sometimes you do see individual hairs. They're much thinner and more sparse, and they're shorter. Because we need more protection on the top, because that's where the elements come from, right? And so that is the general idea of how the eye is made. Now, the shape of the eyelids, the shape of the direction the eye is pointing, that changes from person to person. So, but it's just important to know how the cornea comes out. Well, it's important to know everything really. How the cornea comes out, and so your eyelids kind of wrap around that. Another thing to note here, especially when drawing value, is that this white part of your eyeball, that's called the sclera, and it's never actually bright white. There's always some sort of value shape here. And when interpreting that, you can think of those original studies of light hitting a sphere, right? Because the eyeball is a sphere, so the light hitting a sphere, there's going to be that core shadow and then a bright highlight. So I drew that backwards. If the light, like I said, was coming from this side's going to be lighter than this side over here on the left. So that is the frontal view of the eye. So to draw it from the profile view, again, we still have the eyeball in the eye socket, but we have a general direction, like a downward plane for the eye socket. So keeping that in mind, we have the top lid that goes over top, kind of like this. And then we have the bottom lid that comes out and around like this. And then we don't have as much of a fold here. It's more of a kind of a sack, like the bags under your eyes. We do have a distinct fold up here for the top eyelid. And the brow ridge that comes out and around. Brow ridge actually comes out for the nose. And we have that nose that kind of comes out like that. So important though that we have the thickness of the eyelids that comes out. And that is the profile view of the eye. If we were to get specific with eyelashes, we have the eyelashes that kind of come out and eyelashes that come out that way. For the nose, it's again very general idea of how the nose works. Nose comes straight down from the brow ridge, right? This does come out from the face. Then we have a ball of the nose at the tip here. Again, everybody's nose is different, but that's what kind of gives us this tip of our nose here. There's that ball of cartilage. Then we have the nostrils that come out. Again, this is from the frontal view. The nostrils that come out at these kind of cartilage shapes here. So then we have fold of skin that goes up and around. Some are bigger than others. And it goes up and around like that. And so where this fold of the nasal ridge goes in, kind of goes in like that. So if we were able to see a little bit on the underside here, the skin kind of comes up and folds under. Just kind of change my view here so you can see a little bit more of that. Just kind of comes out like this at an angle. Then from this nasal ridge here, we have the philtrum that comes out right here, and we can start to build the lips off of that. So typically though, we have nice core shadow shapes that build up around the bottom of the nose here. There's typically core shadow here and reflected light on the underside of the nose. We have a nice buildup of the core shadow. Slight portrait view of the nose. We have the bottom and it kind of protrudes out from the face, kind of like this. We have the nostril that kind of comes and wraps around. Sometimes this kind of points up and then back down to form the ball of the nose. So it's a general idea of the portrait view of the nose. We also have the slight division right here that comes out for the cheek. And then we have the division of the lip that comes out from where the nose the tip of the nose connects back down into the face. We have this line that comes down that's the philtrum for the lips. So again, we have this slight division sometimes, or even sometimes it's not even a line, it's just a value shift. All right, so that is the general proportions of the nose. And again, always important to look for that core shadow shape at the bottom of the nose, and typically at the nostril here as well. So just drawing these lips right here. Say we have the philtrum that comes down from the nose here. This is where the tip of the top lips are going to be. Say we've done the measurements to find where that division line is for the mouth. What we can kind of think of this as is that there's two fat sacs, smaller fat sacs up at the top lip that kind of go up at this pointed angle. Go up this pointed angle here. That's what kind of helps make these tips in the mouth here. And that's also what helps decide that this division in the lip has this upward angle as well. We also have this kind of bigger, more generic fat sac right there, which helps to give us that bottom ridge for the bottom lip. Then this kind of comes out and down, comes out and down kind of like that. And then we have the division of the mouth kind of stops like that. We have a little bit of fat build up right here on the corners of our lip. So keeping that in mind so that's the general makeup of the mouth. These two sacs that come up at upward angles on both sides. So that helps make this top ridge for the lip. And again, like I had said in the lecture, these are typically more of value shifts than they are stark lines making up these shapes. So from the profile view, we have the lip that kind of comes out, in, and then back out. Kind of opens up like that, has a downward angle, and going in line with that division line that we just drew over here for the lips. And it goes up, down, has this kind of an angle to it. Now some are more drastic than others. And then your bottom lip comes around, tucks in, and makes that chin. Make sure I don't make that protrude out farther than it does. So something like that. So taking that into consideration, you can twist and turn the head. And knowing that, say this is the profile view. Say the head's about to turn into 3/4 view, so this is going to shift like this. We know that we're going to see more of this side as it turns. Cool? So that is general features, again, from the frontal and the portrait view.